One of the things that I found very interesting when listening to Martin and Kenny and all these young, eager people is that the way I've been in IBM for 35 years, so I'm kind of a dinosaur. But the things that I measure myself at my age is that I don't check my emails before I go to bed at night. The last thing I do is kiss my wife goodnight. But we have different approaches in our private life, and that's fine. I prefer my style. The other thing, just another comment for the distinguished speakers here is, did you realize how fast and how smooth they went around security? All these fancy things you can do with apples and whatever. And Martin sort of touched the subject a little bit like if you're on a hot pan, you know. I mean, Sven is going to fix this. And this is exactly what we do as security architects, you know. Someone says, go in and fix this and make it swift. So what I'm going to do now here is to talk a little bit about the IBM Security Strategy, because this is quite good, actually. And then I'm going to dive into a little bit of what it is. We're going to peel the onion a little bit. I'm not going to be too technical. No worries. I know. Yes? I know. I am between you and the drinks. Okay? I know this. So it won't be some kind of an architectural ride in that respect. But Nyhed, you also asked me to sort of introduce a little bit of what do we see coming in the new things around the security space and so on. So that's what we're going to round on with some of the threat platform, the identity management, and a little bit about the authentication and so on. Because the interesting thing here is really that with all the new devices and every new things coming up here, security and security architecture has really become under stress now. Because the speed that you have to adapt to new things is dramatically. I mean, I'm working in this security area since 1999, and just in that short period of time, you can actually see how fast things went. So you have to have a strategy and an architecture and a governance model in place. I'm not talking about a 20 years project, but you do need to have that in place to actually be able to adapt to these things here. Otherwise, you're really, really in for trouble. Trust me, I have seen customers being there. So, 1st of January in IBM was 1st of January, as in many other places. But it was a good day in IBM because we had a divorce in IBM. And that is, normally divorces are not very nice. You know, I don't know any divorces that's been very nice, except this one, because we divorced from Tivoli. Finally, IBM decided that security is so important that we will have our own division. So 1st of January, IBM founded what they call IBM Security Solution. And why did IBM do that? Well, IBM did that because they could see that security is getting more broad. I will come into this in the presentation and so on, but also that IBM had a lot of security products in other areas. Now, the biggest part was in Tivoli, yes, but we also have security product in WebSphere. They don't really know anything about security. In Rational, some of them do. We also had some other security products. We have Guardium, InfoSphere, for instance. But so the problem was really to get this sort of integrated together, because this is what we have been working on as security architects in IBM for many, many years now. We would like to see all these security components as loosely coupled service components that integrate to the infrastructure. But we want them loosely coupled. Now, we couldn't do this because we were bumping into WebSphere, we were bumping into Rational, we were bumping into information management, we were bumping into a lot of stuff. So it really was annoying. It was really a stone in the shoe. So now we are our own. We have our own developers, own marketing, own managers, the whole thing. We are on our own, which is quite nice, but also a little bit scary, of course. This is the way it is. But we're on our own now. So now we do have, so when you see that the Tivoli name will disappear from security products as they get introduced with a new version. So you will see it's called IBM Security Systems now, not Tivoli. Okay? What we see here is the picture, how threats has evolved over time. And we do see many times. I mean, the times, and I'm sure that Martin can at least we can agree on this one, yeah, that, you know, the days where the hackers went into your homepage and said, you know, Kilroy was here, ha, ha, ha. These days are basically over now. That's not really interesting here. What is interesting now, and with the volume of information we have here, is now we have actually thefts. We have actually intruders both on the outside and on the inside. We have seen that with botnet, energy supplies. We have seen that, closing down water plants, closing down electricity plants. And now we have this fight about raw materials. I'm quite sure that here in Iceland, you have seen an army of Chinese and Russians, just like in Greenland. I mean, I don't know how many heads of states have been in Greenland the last 3 months, not because they like the Greenlanders. No. They want the raw materials. So we can see the picture coming up here. So this is why IBM would like to say that we need to find a strategy on how can we help our customers to create a strategy that can actually sort of encapsulate these things here. And then we have, loose cannons like Martin coming out with his bring your own device and all this stuff here. And we also have to secure this here. And that's not easy. We started on this journey already in 2007 because customers said to us, hey IBM, you're big and you're blue. Can't you just try to structure this discussion a little bit with us? Can you create a reference architecture so we can, when we went into customers, we were talking about apples, bananas, pears, and it was all mixed up, it was all fruit. But it's not really the way it is. So what we did was that we actually tried to divide it up and says, okay, we try to structure a bit. So we put in a pillar called people, which is identity and access management. We have something called data, which means how do we handle data, not only data in transaction, but also data at rest. This has become suddenly very interesting because someone invented this cloud name. And if we have a public cloud, how do we store data there? Our own data. Do we have to encrypt them? If we have to encrypt them, it's a security issue. It is a security issue anyway, because where is the cloud? If any of you are involved in application development, you also know that if you want to develop a new application, your management will always go for the biggest or the cheapest quote, I would say, to get this application developed. And it's not really perhaps here in the western part, it's usually far, far eastern. So how do we control these things? How do we get test data out to these people without really sort of unveiling any personal information? On applications, how do we control that one? How do we control that when we code things, that we don't have too many holes in the code that we actually produce? How to make sure that the web application that we've used for 5 or 6 years, it actually still can handle what happens at this moment in time. But also, a very interesting thing here that I have spent a fair amount of my life with is how do we actually do attribute security? How can we, through policies, get security a little bit out of the application? So a person who actually understands security. So when we talk about applications, how can we get security out of applications? Why do we do this? Because we change this damn security policy all the time. Because someone in the business invents something. Yes, like Martin, again, sorry picking on you, Martin, but you're there anyway. With his bring your own device, we have to change the policies. How do we change the policy in security policy in an application? You do this by opening the application, right? If it's a Java application, look at the container, change this thing, test it, and get it back in again. It takes forever. You need a policy to actually change this policy, and then the application will have to enforce that policy. So this is one of the things that we can discuss here on infrastructure. We're going to look at around how do we actually handle identity, intrusion protection and all the stuff that comes in on the network stuff. So this we do here. So in that way, we try to structure the things. And actually, we did take a step further on. Now, I'm not going to do any architectural highlight on this one here, but there's actually a blueprint reference architecture. It's a red book from IBM, where we actually have taken this one here and created a security reference architecture, which I can recommend you to use, not to actually introduce it within your organization, but it's very good as a check mark, you could say, and how do I really structure my architecture? If I really want to go into this fast-moving thing, how do I actually get a governance and risk model in place? How do I actually structure the things? It doesn't mean that you have to sort of open up your departments and hire 500 new people, but it's a nice way to structure things. So you make a check mark and say, okay, do we need this? How do I actually discuss these things? We did spend a lot of time in it, so I can recommend it. So what we do now in IBM, what we like to do here, I'm going to break these down. I'm going to go into details with it. But what we actually do, we have 4, I wouldn't call them silos because this is a bad word, but we have 4 things how we focus our security strategy on. If we take this, what we call integrated intelligence, what it basically means is that we would like to collect all the logs that you have, not only network logs, but applications logs, access logs, any logs. We would like to correlate this into some meaningful things that someone, either an auditor or security people, someone else can actually look into this stuff here. I mean, everybody in this room here, you back up your logs. Of course you do that. But I mean, what happens if you have someone to actually go through them and actually try to find a transaction pattern through a various number of logs? I mean, be my guest, you know, it's going to be a rocky ride if you don't have anything to do with it. So that was the reason that IBM in November last year, we bought something called Q1 Labs, and now it's called QRadar. And QRadar is going to be the foundation of our threat platform. This is where we're going to dump most of the information down there so we can actually monitor it and we can actually make some sense out of it. So this is going to be one of the backbones of our security strategy here. Now, the integrated approach here, where we say we want to stay ahead of the landscape, as Peter said in his introduction, you know, I mean, we buy things, you know. I mean, we probably the biggest customer at American Express because we buy companies faster than I can, you know, change my shirt. But what we did also that we bought ISS some years ago, which are dealing with its appliance boxes that deals with intrusion detection, intrusion prevention, and monitoring on networks and so on. We'll dive into this a little bit. But when we opened the box there, we also bought a research company, or research laboratory, you could call it, in Atlanta called X-Force. And I'll also dive into what X-Force is about. But what X-Force can do is actually, they can detect threats. They do detect threats, maybe ahead of it. What they also do is they do virtual patching. So we can actually create virtual patches before Microsoft even can get anything going. So we would like to leverage that not only to the network appliances, but also to the virtual environment and all the other environments that you do have, that you can actually leverage that functionality. The X-Force people, they release what they call a report. They do that twice a year. The report itself is free of charge. You can just Google X-Force IBM, and you will get the report down. The report is quite good because it tells you about the breaches that's coming up, what's you know, on the hyper list, is there still SQL injections, and how many have there been there, and so forth and so on. I'm quite sure that Sony is a bit sad they didn't read the X-Force report, but I mean, they're suffering now, so they probably will. So when we talk about infrastructure as well, this is also where we like to have these loosely coupled things. But we need to make sure that the applications that we develop is good, sound, and safe. But we also have to make sure that we actually know who has access to what. So we have to propagate the identities from the access management part. See, this is where it becomes difficult. This is why Martin, you know, he's just looking at his MacBook now because this is getting far too complicated. But this is really we need to know. We need to know this person here. I will come into how we can distinguish if he comes from an iPhone, or he's come from a laptop, or is he sitting in the network, or outside the network, or somewhere in Mallorca, drunk like a pope, whatever. But we also want to manage the life cycle here. We want to manage the life cycle of the user, the life and death of a user. You need to have that control. Can you see this? I mean, if you don't have that control, how can you then just open it up to the whole world and say, you know, bring your own device, bring whatever you like, you know, we don't really care. You have to be in control of this. You have to know how to create the user. You need to know how to delete the user when they leave the company. And in the lifespan of a user, they usually change jobs. And they change responsibilities. But you don't want to accumulate all these accesses of a user's lifetime. I mean, I've been 35 years in IBM. I could accumulate. I'm a collector. So if IBM doesn't take it away from me, I just keep with my accesses. Of course. Well, you never know, do you? I mean, just look at my garage. I mean, my wife is crazy because it's full, but you never know, do you? So, but anyway, so IBM has woken up and they got this endpoint thing from Martin, and now they're taking things away from me, which probably is okay. But you have to manage this life cycle of a user, okay? So this is the strategy that IBM is doing now, because now security is no longer just an IT project. Security is the foundation of a company. And the boards and the people who owns this company, whatever it is, public or private owned, it doesn't really matter. But they want to make sure that they are flexible and secure enough to go into the markets. So you can't just come and say, yeah, we can do this stuff here in 6 months' time, maybe, if we can get a .NET developer, if you get a Java developer, whatever. It doesn't really work. You can't say, you cannot use security as an excuse for not doing the business. Then you will be out somewhere in the harbor. So let's go down a little bit deeper down to see, what is it that we can actually do here with these here. But with QRadar, as we call it today, we can actually get all kind of events that comes in from any device. It's based on policies, so of course, you have this, there are templates that can help you with this, because one of the things that was in the past, there has been products and things like that, and they're going to dump, 6 terabytes of data on your desk and say, well, you figure out, and you sit down there with some kind of an alert or an event, and you say, is this dangerous or not? I don't know. Do you know? Well, I don't know. So there, of course, are policies and templates and so on that you can help to try to structure the amount of data you come in here. And you also have to decide, how much you want to do sort of in near real time, and how much you can actually list out as reports. I mean, one of the things that is quite neat here is missed login. One of the problems that we have seen with especially financial customers is what we call slow attacks. It basically means someone trying to log in once every 3 weeks, fail. Go another 3 weeks, fail. Who's gonna make that pattern that says, why is this guy doing this all the time? It's not his job. Who's gonna actually get that with that time span? You just look at it and it says, oh, just another idiot. Off you go, because he didn't log in. No, but he's tried that now 7 times. Is that interesting? Maybe. I had a case in Finland where they suddenly discovered that they have a huge amount of searches on their account databases on a Sunday where no database maintenance was scheduled. Now, you need to look into this, of course. Why do you scan your database on a Sunday afternoon? It was probably raining. But anyway, why do you do it? You need to know. And you need to know because you're opening up your system. Now, when I started in IBM, everything was nice, green screens, 3270s, everything was happy. You did your job and you went home. But that's not the way it is anymore. So this is why. So when we started out this one here in 1999, I would say that people who followed me, or anyone else who did this, would say that we now have an architecture that's so flexible that you can actually do this stuff here. But it's not too late. And I would say that even though that, as Martin says, this is also a sales presentation, but these are Lego blocks. So you can pick any Lego blocks and says, I want to start here, because this is where can you actually see anything from me? I mean, I'm a big man, so I'll just, okay, good. So you can actually say here that you can pick up any of the Lego blocks and say, this is where it hurts. Is it really the log management? Is it getting all the information out here that hurts? This is where you can start to develop your governance model. You can actually do it there. Or is it identities? Do you really have control? I mean, everybody has an Active Directory, and then they suddenly realize that we have Active Directory, so we are safe. Yes, but how many applications do we have who have just a little table running in a container where they actually store the user IDs and something like that? I mean, another story, we have to do this, but in the US, I know it's US and it's big, but the picture is probably quite good. There was a company who called us in because they had 81 security products, and they said, just maintaining them, just keeping track on licenses, just making them integrate is making life hell. We need a partner who has an integrated approach, who can actually go in and help us to get this working. So with the X-Force, X-Force has a very, very neat collection of all kind of weird things that we don't want to know about. They also deliver hosted services, so they do monitor all this stuff here. One very neat thing is actually Microsoft delivers incidents to our X-Force now, which is quite neat because in the market it's actually realized as one of the best research laboratories for this stuff here, and we create these virtual patches for for any breaches. And they do it in a very good and very special way. I have a slide further on. If you stay awake, you will be able to see, how we can actually use just one signature and not 500 signatures just for one vulnerability, which makes the operational cost quite easy to handle. But these guys are good. They're these, who eat pizza, cokes, and have a very light skin and never see daylight. But they're very, very good. And this is what they can do for you. So you can read the report, and you can actually see the stuff coming in, and you can understand. I mean, X-Force was one of the first ones who says, hey, PDF. Everybody says, yeah, we're going to make a PDF document because it's safe. But X-Force came out, I think it's 2 years ago, somebody said, hey, do you realize how many is actually attacking PDF these days? And they actually succeeds in it. I mean, it's nice to have that information. I mean, you have to have that information. Even though you might not like it, you still have to have that information. And then, of course, you can contact us and, and try to figure out what they can do about it. This here is how we're going to handle it internally. I'm going to talk a little bit about AppScan as well, what we call the application scanning. It's a neat little tool that can actually tell you while you're coding if you're doing anything stupid from a security perspective, not from a user perspective. Your UIs and so on, you have to do yourself. But we need to make sure, because as also Martin said rightly, when we have WorkLight or any other application that you're going to shoot out to a device, you have to do something about it. You also need to know about how the identity, how to propagate the identities. I mean, when SOA came around, that was really, really good for me and other architects, because this was really something that we could earn a day's money on. Because SOA was so difficult because you have to propagate identities between different domains, right? You have Java, you have .NET, and you have the good old mainframes. So you have to find out how do we propagate these identities around in a SOA environment in a safe way. Now, we can do that, and we have to make sure that we can do it. The AppScan part is quite neat because it not only can scan the code that you're developing, but if you, for instance, have a website that you have been running for X amount of years, you can actually scan that code, and you'll probably find it look like a Swiss cheese, depending if you look about the vulnerabilities that there are today. So what you can do here is that with the intrusion prevention system here, AppScan can actually scan this thing for you and tell the site protector, which is the manager of this stuff here, what holes you have, and you can actually create a policy saying you cannot enter these characters, for instance, in your URL string. And you can do that until you get this good old application fixed and get it up and running again. Now, this means that you don't have to take it out of service. You can still run it, and people can still do whatever they do, e-business, e-commerce, whatever it is. We had a hospital in Denmark who suddenly realized that their website was like a Swiss cheese, and the CIO said to us, it was actually Ford Consult who ran the scan for them. And he said, I'm going to lose my job if you're not going to fix this one here. I'm going to lose my job because it's personal identifiable information. So you could create a policy here and help him a little bit, and then he could limp away, and then they could fix the application and get it back again. So this is what AppScan can do for you. So you can both do it before and after. We do have companies in Denmark and Sweden, for that sake, who get applications developed in India and China, but the source scanning, they do that with the security department here in the Nordics. They do the source scanning, and they here find out if it's properly secure or not. But you can't get the arms and legs and whatever. You can get that in the Far East. The identity and access management part is another very important part. I always used to say before we bought Curator, I said, if you don't have control of your identities, you don't really have control of anything. And we have been into numerous projects where it only shows, how many orphan accounts do you have in your company? And just think about it. How many of you have completely control over your orphan accounts? Completely control. Good. One. running IBM, I guess. Yes, that's the way. Well, I didn't pay him yet, but he's going to have 2 drinks now. Now, but the thing here is that you have to have control of your identities. You do need that. You can't have people accumulating their access rights. You also need to find out how do I control accesses to my system. I mean, we do have federations, we do have web services, and we do have normal web thing coming in. I mean, in Denmark, we have what we call an MID and other stuff. In Sweden, we have something, and so on and so on. But again, here, you need to have an access management component, a solution that is so flexible that whatever they invent, you will be able to do it. Or if you want to federate, whatever they buy or they find out, or cloud service or whatever, I will come back to this when we come down to sort of more product-specific things. But whatever they invent out there, you will have to say, if it's sample 2.0, just bring it into me, and I will tell you what metadata I want. It's going to take me 1 afternoon, and we're up and running from a security perspective. No big deal. Just tell me what you want, business, and we can fix it. That's the way you should do it. And we do that with data power, with the XML gateway, when you have web services coming in, exactly the same thing. So if you can reuse the same components from a technological part, you can actually, go back and say, we are in control. No big deal. This is the thing. This is the evolution of access management, you could say. And I said, this is where I spend a fair amount of my time. This is where we talk about XACML, if anyone is familiar with that standard, or sort of standard, where we can express policies. That means that even though that I am authenticated to this system here, I am allowed to go in here. But can I access these data based on the context that I am in now? That's the big issue here. And this is what we're trying to solve here by using an external policy, saying, if we create this policy, how can we then actually enforce that policy at runtime in that context that you're in now? Because you can change your context over the day, depending on where you are, whatever you are. I'll come back to that as well. I'll come back to a lot, but don't worry. I mean, we'll be back at 7 o'clock or something like that. So controlling the life cycle here is very important for us, to actually make an architecture, to make a solution, whatever we're going to call it, that is so flexible that it can actually, it's not glued into the infrastructure, but it integrates. The best metaphor I have is really Lego. It's not because it's Danish, but it's actually the way it works, that you can actually take these blocks. You don't have to buy the whole suite, but you can buy them bits by bits, as long as you have a good executable roadmap of where you want to go. It's no big deal. You can pick whatever you like. So this is another nice little architectural drawing. We like boxes. But if you see here that we do have the access management and the identity management going over to the identity and fraud, which basically means that we have to make sure, who is doing what and why, and are they allowed to do that. And we have to divide that between what we call role management. I don't know if any of you have been down in that area on roles. But it's going to be a bit of a rocky ride if you want to go the whole way. But you have to define, how do we create these roles for these users here. And then you can actually use policies to enforce that finer-grained policy about are the users allowed to do this or not. Our security intelligence up here, this is where we're going to suck up all the information. Now, each component, of course, has its own audit functionality, because you can buy them bits by bits, of course you can. But we would like to see that the security intelligence here integrate also with other products than IBM's, of course, so that you can actually get a full-blown picture about how does this work. The next child that we're going to adopt into our security division is Guardium, is the database protection tool, which is going to be quite nice and quite exciting. So that's just what's coming up next. I don't want to spend too much time with that, I can see. That's another marketing slide, but this is the idea. You want to do the integrated intelligent research protection and lifecycle management. That is the cornerstone of this. So it's not only a matter of products, just switching products over the counter. If we look around a little bit about the threat platform is going to be seen as a triangle, which means that we do have the lovely people from X-Force. We do have our intrusion prevention systems for our networking system, and then we have the intelligence platform that can take all these data and create these reports, create these vulnerability incidents, if you like, and you can actually drill down. So just get one incident saying, we have an incident here, and then you can drill down and say, what the web servers, what network part, whatever, actually contributed. Because it can be a sum of events that creates an alert. It doesn't need to be one, just because something out there in the network, but it could be a sum of something weird in the network going to something that is very secret up here, could be a development database, something like that, and suddenly the sum of this creates an incident. But if you're just looking at a silo here and a silo here, you might say, no big deal. But it could be a pattern. I mean, we still have our lovely French guy, you know, the guy who frauded these banks here, who went in and created his identities and removed them again and so on. I mean, you can have all these things coming up. I mean, there's a lot of pictures, of scary pictures about the stuff here. So how does this threat platform work? Well, I mean, if you look at the advanced threat protection platform, this is where we're dealing with sort of the network layer, you could say. We do intrusion prevention. We do the content data security scanning, so we can find out whatever the content is good, bad. We can do web application protection, as I said, because we can get the output from AppScan, from the application scanning, and we actually create policies that says that you cannot enter these characters in the URL because it doesn't make sense to us, and you're not allowed to do it because we have a breach. We don't say that, of course. And we can do this here. This is one of the new things I'm going to come in on. This is a very difficult word to me to say, but it's called network anomaly detection. Whatever that means, I will come back in a very short time. On that layer here, we do have whatever we get of input from our X-Force, and they're going to come in with all the vulnerabilities, all the malicious websites, all the ID. We had an incident actually here in the end of Q1 here in Nordics. There was an attack, and a Nordic customer. I'm not allowed to say what it was, but they managed. I mean, is there any mainframe customers here? Anyone who knows RAGF, sort of as a ZOS, good old company. They managed to get into RAGF. And we could see that they were being hammered from two places in the world. One was South Korea, and the other one was Russia. But they were actually in there, in the RAGF system. It was not the software product, it was sloppy lack of policies, we could say. But we could actually go in there and help them and say, you know, what is it they're after? What have they done? What footprint have they left, even though they tried to get rid of it? So we can help them all that stuff here. And if you look at the Q radar, what we can do here is we can do log management, we can collect the stuff, and we can monitor events coming in, and we can do risk management about this stuff here. So we can actually categorize the incidents here and say, you know, what is it really they want to look like? As Kenny said, you know, with his famous little thing that he can have in his pocket. So if you are in charge of this stuff here, you can actually, before you reach the office, you can go in and say, okay, what incidents do we have today? What do we have to look at first? Blah, 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 and so on. So that is the vision that we would like to have, that we actually categorize this for you. This is what I was saying here is that what we do here in the intrusion prevention detection thing is that if you just do signature scanning, you will see, I mean, if you're just a little bit familiar about this hacking business here, you know that the guys who actually create these vulnerabilities is a very, very limited amount of people that really have the brain to do it. It is, if you look at it on a worldwide scale, it is relatively few people who actually have the brain. But what you have out there is tons and tons of copycats who take these things and change them a little bit, doing a little bit of a twist here and there. And this is why it's so difficult that when you have signature scanning, then you have the signature scanning, and then you have these smaller variations of signature scanning. And you have to create a new signature for each little bit of variation of this vulnerability. So you end up having, I don't know how many signatures you have to protect in your system. With the ISS, as we call it here, we can do protocol awareness. Thanks to these guys in X-Force, they have created a algorithm where they can actually understand the behavior of a vulnerability. So we have one signature who protects for this vulnerability. So we only have to manage one because the system understands how this vulnerability works. So even though that you change the signature a bit, it doesn't really matter. We will still block it. So that is a big differentiator between what other companies are doing, like signature scanning, and we do the protocol analysis. What we can do here in the QRadar stuff is this anomaly detection. This is something new that we've come up with in this quarter. And what we would like to do here is also to get a picture about what is going on. Except just doing the normal trafficking stuff, we want to add identities into it. And we also want to go into the flow, actually, so that you can see here that one of the things that you can do is, as these guys say, network don't lie. I mean, you can go in and you can edit the logs, but if you have anything going on in the network, it will still be monitored. So if you know that something's been going on, even though they're going to change the log, you will still have a network trace of it. And you can still do a 360 degrees breach, which basically means that we can follow a breach right from the start of the network and until they get into the databases. But also we can go into the flow, the Q flow or the V flow, the application flow, and this is where we can find out if any botnet is going on or similar things. So with this threat platform, you can actually, at least, I mean, I said nothing is 100%, but you can at least protect yourself in an automated way, so you don't have to spend a normal amount of time. Am I running out of battery here, or what? Probably. Not me, it's just this thing. I can go on and go on. So, identity management, I'm going to speed up a little bit. This is one of my own slides because I found the IBM slides, they're really bad. But so what identity management is about, because this is when I was starting to say, you have, without identities, forget it. So our identity management is a loosely coupled component that can provision identities to any source out here based on what roles they would have within the company. So anyone get hired, fired, whatever, usually happens in an HR system, gets triggered, gets provisioned in, gets sent into the identity management system, find out what is he going to do here, what is his role, and then he can provision it out to the end user here. Could be Active Directory, SAP, whatever. We don't really care because we have the integration tool to do any integrations that we haven't come across any integration yet that we couldn't integrate to. As long as we can do an add, modify, delete search to the tag to the endpoint, we can do it. We can create auditors saying, who approved what within the workflow, who approved stuff, how can we do it? We have done this since, 2002, 3 or something like that. So that is all standard. This is all well proven. The next thing that came across is really, how can we do the role modeling stuff? And this one here comes within the identity management product. So we can actually sit down here and do role modeling. So when you suck out all the information from the HR system, from the Active Directory, all these 70,000 groups you have, whatever, how do I construct roles from all this here? The role modeling, we can do that now, giving you suggestions on how can you structure this. Because don't go into an RBAC model, please. I mean, very few companies have the money to do that. It's going to take 5 years and will never pay back. But make a hybrid model where you do have coarse-grained roles, and then you do have a request-based accesses where you have some kind of help desk to do it with. Another thing that came up, and also coming in here, is the privileged users. It actually originated from the hosting systems, but other companies have taken this up again. Because how do we handle privileged users within a company? I mean, and this is where it gets a bit scary, because people get very insulted by this. Because, I have been a DBA here for 10 years. Do you mistrust me? Well, you never know, do you? I mean, do you really have to have 10 DBA accounts here? Or could you just have 5 DBA accounts? And then you could have a role that allows you to check out the responsibilities of being a DBA, do your job, and check this account in again. Then suddenly you have traceability of all the privileged users. As I said, it came from the hosting business because you do have many companies, of course, and you do have a scarce amount of DBAs or whatever, and a DBA can have access to this company's databases, and this company's databases, and this company's database. But these companies here who are hosted, they would like to know. They would like to know who actually had the fingers in my database. That's Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday, whatever it was. Can you prove it to me? Yes, you can, if you check it in, check it out. And you can, of course, also see, if someone like this report here sent something out via Gmail. Of course, nobody in this room would do it. When we talk about authentication, authorization, same story. We have done this since 1999. This is where I started when I was younger and some kilos lighter at least, according to my wife. We protect it here, so we stop any request coming in here. Doesn't matter if it's from any of Martin's devices or whatever it is. We authenticate the user here. We want to know, does he have a valid authentication? One thing. Two, is he actually allowed to enter the system on a coarse-grained level? If he is, then we can pass it on to the back-end system. Don't glue it in here, please. It's going to cost you a bundle. And coming back here, what is coming up here is what we call risk-based access control. This is, as you said, if you have NetBank has requested this, and it's coming out here in November. So we can actually get accesses now based on the risk that you're carrying. For instance, the characteristics of your device, even the GPS of your device can be a part of the context that evaluates the risk score, which basically means that when I'm in Denmark, I can do my net banking or something like that. Fine, no problem. But if I suddenly sit down in Mallorca or Gran Canaria or whatever, and logs onto my net bank, they can say that I'm from an untrusted zone. He's probably drunk or something like that. So the bank can actually limit my accesses and says, you cannot transfer this money, you can only get this money out, whatever they want to do with it. But the risk score, they can pass in here and says, now this guy here, he is not where he used to be. So we can limit his risks. Federation coming in, done that since 2004. SAML, OAuth, Liberty. Anyone said anything? No? Okay. So that has been in the landscape for a long, long time. And I said, the newest thing is really that we can do OAuth 2.0, if that's ever coming up as some usable use cases. The telco industry is looking on OAuth, and we might see what's coming up here. Identity propagation is another thing that is interesting. So actually, that component, sorry, don't worry, come back again. The federated component here can do, of course, federations to partners and clouds and God knows what else using SAML. SAML has been the de facto standard now for any cloud integration. But what it also can do, because we're using WS Trust, a standard, open standard, we can actually do secure token service, so we can actually map the user ID to different domains within the infrastructure. Meaning that if you come in here as Joe, within the proxy, and you get mapped to an application server, and then suddenly you have another application, this looks more like a RegF, but doesn't really matter. But if it's a Java platform, this is a .NET platform, suddenly you have two different security realms. How do you handle that? You need something that can create a Kerberos token to the .NET environment, so you can actually keep a track on the user. And we can do that with the federation component. TSPM, as I said, this is the next thing that is coming up here. TSPM has been on there now for 3 years. We got a new stream coming up, a new service stream coming up, and new enhancements. But again, what we'd like to see here is we have the policy enforcement point, the policy administration point, the policy decision point, and then the enforcement point down here. So we separate things out. So we store the policies on the decision point, and then of course you can call out to policy information points if you need that to evaluate if a user can have access to this, that, and the other stuff. This is a good one. Everyone who's teaching me presentation says this is disgusting, and it probably is. But being an architect, I'm allowed, because I think it tells the whole story. What you have to see here is, here you have identity management, And here, you're actually administrating all your other things like single sign-on, web access management, CM, QRadar stuff, all the stuff here. But here, so you have these loosely coupled Lego blocks, right? But you are actually enforcing them, because this is very, very standard here. You've got your HTTP server, you've got some presentation layer, data layer, some databases. Everybody has this. So, and then you can actually see here that this is where we're going to enforce it. And we are going to collect all the logs down here to make sure that we can control the security. This is a governance model that actually works, okay? So the blocks are up here, and as I said, you can pick up any blocks to start with if you haven't followed us from the beginning, of course. That's no big deal. You can do that. And then you can create this type of architecture, loosely coupled, and you can actually do whatever you like. This is the one that I took this for Martin, because this is something, where you have his device, he has some networks, blah, blah, and you have here. So if we map this all the way back to the reference architecture I showed you, right? So here, we can discuss device management and all that stuff here. Martin is doing that. Here, we can discuss what is happening on the transport layer here. Well, our intrusion detection, our infrastructure stuff can handle this. What is happening here is the access management, the identity management, the app scan. They're handling all the stuff here for you. So by having this reference architecture, you can actually divide something that Apple and Martin really couldn't grab. You can actually break down here in 3 very small, or 4 very small little boxes, and you can actually handle them one by one.